Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the BizNet software webinar this week. We're going to talk about some of the top 4 problems with Excel reporting and how to fix those. We'll spend a little bit of time in PowerPoint, and then we'll spend the remaining of the time actually showing how we work with Excel data and connecting your data. Our agenda for today is going to be talking through the Excel problems, how we're going to solve those, of course, and then the takeaway. Of course, I like to do the first is introducing kind of the problem as we see it today. So the first thing we're going to notice is that, today's environment, we have data just coming from everywhere. There's a data explosion going on, and that data is located in all different types of places, whether it's in your a cloud source or your SQL database or even in Excel. We find ourselves trying to pull that data together to run our organizations or to get information out to people. So it's really created a problem that helps us, it's more complicated and it gets bigger each day. And one of the things we want to make sure we talk through is how do we address that, right? Today, most of us use Excel. And then, of course, that's why we're talking about the top 4 problems and doing that. The reason we do it, of course, is there's 1 billion users worldwide. Everybody knows that if we share that Excel file, there's a pretty good chance that everybody is going to be able to take and open it up. It's common business language, and of course, all the different presentation layers, the ability to create, dashboards and spark lines and all that fun stuff we love to do in Excel when we're playing with it. So, of course, the problem we run into is what are we doing with today? We're making decisions. We have a consolidated, we're doing consolidations, we're using it to do commission reports, we're using it across the entire organization. And so how do we solve that problem that's not just prevalent for the finance and accounting folks? This is something that every person in the organization runs into. So how do we help to solve those issues? And that's what we want to try to address today as part of our presentation, okay? Of course, the problem is that we go in and start using Excel like we do today, which is exporting the data, copying it, pasting, and doing all the things we do every month or every reporting period. We create this manual process that both uses lots of time, but of course this can be prone to errors. And so when we talk through that problem, why do we continue to do it, of course, is that, the information is worth the cost. We simply need the information. We need to be able to do the modeling or what we're using Excel to do today. And so how do we replicate or take and solve those problems? Of course, the first problem we want to talk through is connecting to your data in Excel. Now, every application you open up, it seems like there's an export to Excel button, right? And that's certainly one way to get Excel into data. Get data into Excel. Of course, we've got people that are really sharp and are skilled enough to write those external data connections or connect via an ODBC. That requires someone that's got that specialized skill set, understands how to connect to that data externally. Of course, the second issue is once you have that data in Excel, great. I use the export button. Now I've got all these thousands of rows, columns across. What do I use to work with that data? And today, if I'm an Excel expert, right? I'm using SUMIFs, or I'm using Vlookups, or some combination of a nested VLOOKUP. And of course, you go out into Google and you find out, how do I do this? And it really, really is a complicated process to do that today. For the guys that are the Excel gurus, it's easy. They make it so it looks so easy, and it's great. But what do we do for just the regular business person, right? And that's what we want to kind of talk through and give people options. Now that I've exported the data or I've connected to the data, what do I do with it once I get into Excel? So we'll talk with how we want to use that or solve that issue. Of course, what do we do with it next month? Is showing how, whether we're using a direct connection that BizNet provides or an ODBC connection or even exporting, how do I take and create a report that I can rebuild or refresh or bring it back in, and I don't have to spend that 20 hours again each month rebuilding it. And so we'll talk through that as well. So these are the different things we want to make sure we cover in today's webinar, of course. And then the last piece is, I have a report. It's not unusual when we create a report that, I have this report, but I need to share that across the entire organization, and each person needs a different version of that report, whether it's commission reports or customer analysis or whatever it happens to be, CRM data, ERP data, whatever it happens to be today. How do I take and create a report that I don't have to manually email out or do, move and copy and create new workbooks to share that information? To take and create an automated process through and through. And in the end, that's what we'll start out with the demo when we talk through how to solve that. So the different products that we'll use to solve that. First, of course, is connecting to that data, so we avoid all that exporting, copying, and pasting. The second piece is, once I have that data, what else can I do with it? Now, can I answer my own questions? Third, of course, we talked about sharing it out. The first product that we'll talk about is the Biz Connector, and that'll be a direct connection to the data, so that I don't have to use an export. I don't have to copy and paste. I don't have to write an ODBC connection. The second piece, of course, is our BizNet 7 interface. And if we have existing customers on the phone, this is a product that a lot of you may or may not have been exposed to, but it's part of your existing implementation today for most. And it allows us to not only work with the pre-existing products that you have with BizNet, but to also work with Excel data directly and in combination with what we're connecting to, and give you more flexibility. And of course, the last piece is that the ability to take and broadcast everything out. And so that's that sharing that information across the entire organization, where I have that report, but each person needs their own version of it. And not only do they need their own version, but they need to be able to see it as a PDF or an HTML or whatever it happens to be, right? They're remote employees, whatever. So let's talk through what we are going to show when we do that in the demo process. So we'll open up Excel in just a second, and we'll talk through some examples, right? A lot of the existing customer base that may be joining us today, you may be using the BizNet products for just financial reporting. Or if you're a new, possible new customer looking at the next easiest way to work with our data in Excel, we're not just a financial reporting tool. Anything that you use Excel for today, we can take and simplify it. And we'll do that by giving you the ability to modify reports or create ad hoc reports, get answers on the fly. We'll show an example of how to drill down into the information and answer questions, sharing the information across that organization, and really taking and automating the entire Excel process. Take an existing report today that you would have in your environment, and we'll take you through how to automate that. So you have a full understanding of what the BizNet or BizInsight Excel suite helps you to solve those 4 key issues when working with Excel data. And then also just answering questions of the data. Maybe I don't need a report, but I have a question I want to answer, and just dive in and see how we can work with big data. All right. So with that, I'm going to jump into our Excel environment. And so here's my desktop. I want to go out and launch a report, and I'm going to launch it. I'm going to double click on it. It's an Excel template, so it'll create a new version of it for me. And it's going to go out and open my file up, and we'll have some pre-existing financial and operational reports, right? So we'll go out, it's going to bring the data in, I'll refresh the report, and we'll be able to take and interact with this information. Great. So now I've got my reports open, I'm connected to the data. Let's talk through some of those financial and operation examples, right? To start with, now that we have an Excel file that we're using to create dashboards with, that's not only just an Excel file, but now interactive with the BizInsight product, it allows us to take and create those dashboards across different types of data, whether it's gross margin or financial data, and by taking and changing that period, bring in that latest information, right? And that's where, being connected to the data and being interactive, now I can create reports that are truly dynamic and allow us to save all that time, right? We talked about the ability to not only take and create reports, but to give the end users the ability to quickly modify reports. And all the things we're going to do today, the goal was, as an organization, was to create a reporting solution, kind of for the masses, not something that requires that Excel guru or a SQL expert or a systems analysis, but someone that can open up an Excel file like I did. Maybe I want to see this through 6 periods instead of 1 period. Take and literally drag and drop that across and see the additional periods we want to take a look at, all right? And I'll drag that column across. And so now, I'll go one more, we'll go to December here. So now, as an end user consuming reports, I open up an Excel file, I'm able to modify it, and I've connected to the data. So I haven't had to do any of that export, refresh an ODBC connection. When I share this report, it's literally share and it runs with the end user when we have that. Now when I take and have questions of the data, maybe I'm going to go out and look at sales commissions, for example. And I'm looking across the different periods and I can see, wow, our largest one was in July. And if I right-click, I now begin to answer my own questions, whether I bring it back as just a list of information or a pivot table. Maybe I'm not comfortable with a pivot table and I just want to see a list of all of my transactions that are part of the sales commissions, right? And so now I have a complete example of every transaction that took place that's part of those sales commissions today. And I can see the different balances that are part of it, right? The ability to share that across different types of users. We talked about managing the versions, right? Maybe I have a P&L or an expense analysis, or maybe I have a commission report. I want to create the commission report one time and share it across 50 different salespeople. And I don't want to write 50 different reports. I want to write it one time. I can go in and use a filter inside the report to take that report and filter it down to an individual segment of the business, whether it's a division, a salesperson on a commission report, or as in this example, our hardware division inside of a P&L. We can go through sales analysis, and this is where that ability to use Excel's capabilities to create conditional formatting. And in this case, I'm doing a sales analysis. I have 3 different sales. I have all my salespeople, and I'm highlighting the 3 top salespeople for each period. And I can create a report like this. I can spend the time to do the formatting and the conditional reporting on it, or conditional formatting. And when I want to see the different types of data, change the period and bring that new data in if we want, right? Maybe I want to see this next year's, upload it. So this is the newest data. And so now I'm able to leverage Excel without having to fight through that connection to the data. Right? And we do that using a direct connection inside of our BizInsight product, right? And it allows us to connect to all the different types of data in a system. If I took Sage 500, for example, which is what a lot of our samples are today, you can see where we're connecting to General Ledger, AP, AR, and those are all drag and drop live connections that we'll take an example through and demonstrate how we connect to it, right? But it allows us to take and create all the different types of reporting, whether it's sales analysis, customer analysis, aged receivables, etc. And so that's great. From a presentation standpoint, we've demonstrated, all that real-time connectivity for financial and different types of operational reports. But now it's okay. The first problem is connecting to the data. We're showing you how we connect. Literally opening a report and we're connecting directly to the data, but also what do we do with it once we get it in Excel? How did we create those reports, right? And so for most folks, when we work with a new customer or even an existing customer on a report they want to build, it starts right here, right? It's an Excel tab, it's values only, or it's a lookup. I have a static report, and what do I need to do to automate this Excel report so that I can take it and share it across the organization? And this is where we kind of take you full circle through the direct connection and how to work with the data in Excel, the data coming out of Sage 500. And then I'll spend another moment actually showing you how to work with just Excel data, right? So I'm going to go out and I want to start by building out a report, and I'm going to start in just that first period, the January. Now, in my report, I have the accounts that represent what accounts make up sales or what accounts making up revenue for hardware. I see that all the time in a lot of the organizations when they're exporting out, they keep those accounts there. You're not limited to using a single account, obviously. If we had a range of accounts or some list of accounts, we could certainly do that. But let's go in and fill this report out. So I go to General Ledger, and I'm going to go in and say, hey, that's great. I want to see General Ledger for January, which is period 1 in my company for 2014, and this is my company. All right, so I'm going to go in and say, great. I go to General Ledger, and I want to bring back a period balance, and I'm going to bring back month-to-date. And I can bring back month-to-date nets, debits, credits, unposted, anything that we would use in this report. Of course, I could do quarter-date or year-to-date as well. Now, again, when you're working with the existing product, if you're existing customers, you know that we have pre-built functions, and we do as well in the latest and greatest versions of our BizInsight products. But we have a little bit more flexibility so that I can change what parameters we use. So let's drag and drop that in. It's going to give us the ability to add new parameters or add parameters to return information in this database. So the first thing you notice, we're going to create a new function to pull back data. It asks where our data is. Today we're going to pull back data from Sage 500. Interesting enough, you can choose different data sources even inside the same report. I have lots of different systems that I'm connected to in my example. I could even use Excel as a source of data, and the same menu item that we're pulling back Sage 500 as an example. I'm going to sum up my account transactions, and I want to return a month-to-date net in this case. And I add the parameters. And the nice thing is these are parameters, names that most of the business users are going to understand if they're working with data in your organization. I want to see company ID. I'm going to use a quick cell reference to add the company ID. I want to use a fiscal year. We'll do the same thing. And I want to add a fiscal period, and we'll do the same thing. Now I'm going to change Excel's anchoring properties so that I have the $ just to the right of the F. I do that so I can copy that formula across. Right, so that's great. So now if I drop this value somewhere, I would have a zero balance because I'm returning all the accounts. So now I need to filter by something. And so in our previous versions, we defined those for you. In our latest version, you can actually add filters on the fly. So I want to filter by whatever is inside of this data set, right? Whether it's account groups, an individual account, or in this case, a segment, which is our natural account. I can add that filter and reference that account. And that allows us to return the value. If I wanted to continue to add filters, I could add as many filters as we like. So you're not limited to a pre-built version of that, right? And so this is going to be the latest version of our BizInsight product. We refer to as BizInsight version 7, but we have the same interface that works with all of our existing clients running on our current versions as well. So it allows you the flexibility to work with your existing data, your existing BizNet product, as well as working with the latest BizInsight interface that allows you to change and add new parameters. So I'll click OK, and we'll put that right there. We'll go OK. And it'll return that value directly from the database. Of course, this is a revenue, so it's account, so it's stored as a credit balance. So I'll go times -1 on the formula to reverse the entry, and that'll change it to a positive. And I'll finish that report out simply by dragging it across. And we'll let it go out and update the data. There we go. And then I'll drag it down. So hopefully you guys are getting the impression of what it takes to start with BizNet and a direct connection to the data, right? And so we'll let it finish loading the connection, loading the data, pulling it in directly in, right? And we'll do an example of that. Now, of course, if you can see on the left-hand side, we do have the ability to not only return month-to-date data, but return year-to-date data as well. And we'll show an example of what we did with that. All right, so we finished out that example. I brought in the new revenue numbers. I'll repeat that for the cost of sales, and we'll finish this report out. All righty. I'm going to take out that -1, and we'll copy it across, right? There we go. And now we finish the report. Now that's an example of us using a BizNet software Biz connector, right? And that connector today was a Sage 500 in this example for General Ledger. All right. We also showed some examples of how to use the same type of connections with customer analysis and aged receivables and sales analysis, etc. So one of the other things I want to show is, hey, that's great what you guys can do with a Biz Insight connector or Biz connector. But what if I have, I'm using BizNet, or what if I have data that it's just in Excel and I want to work with that data, but I don't have a direct connection yet. I've gotten it into Excel, but I don't, what do I do now? So the example we use here is we brought it in. I'm looking at all the data. If I wanted to change it, pull it year over year, I can do that. Any of the data that we're looking at, I can drill down on. If I wanted to look at, let's take and look at our cost of sales as an example. I right-click, drill down, and there's all our transactions. We have just one transaction in that account. But now I want to work with data that I'm just bringing into Excel. And when I do that, I'm going to use just a customer history dump directly out of, in this case, Sage 500. So let's assume that I don't have a connector and I just want to work with my data, right? And so this is where BizNet has given you not only the ability to connect to data, and then once you get it into our into Excel, work with the data, and it's live and it's real time. But for those of you guys that have data living in other places, right? And that's what we talked about earlier. We've got data all over the organization in different types of solutions. Whether it's a CRM data and I'm not connected to it, or AP, AR, customer analysis, whatever. So this is an export directly into Excel. So now what do I do with it if I want to build a report? And so maybe the example I want to use, I want to go out, I've got this data, and I want to create a report for my boss that gives him the average margin for each one of the customer item products, or excuse me, I want the average margin for all the different items that we're selling for a particular year. All right, and this is for 2008. And so I've exported that out of my system. Now how do I get that information quickly for him? Now I could give it to him in a pivot table, but he doesn't want it as a pivot table. He really just wants it as a report. He doesn't want to try to pivot. He wants to do some additional calculations to it. So we're going to take, and instead of doing SUMIFs and Vlookups and all that fun stuff, I'm going to take and use the same Biz Insight user interface that we showed with our real-time connection, but use it with Excel data to help solve another problem when we're working in Excel. And I'll do that first by just highlighting my data set, several hundred rows here, and I'm going to actually take and use this data set directly in BizNet. So I'm going to go to our Biz Insight suite, and I'm going to add this data set as a BizNet data set. I'll select data. It gives me a nice WYSIWYG, a nice menu to step through. So I've already highlighted the range. I'm going to create it as a table. and I'm going to give it a name. Now, why would I create it as a table? Because if I'm going to use this same export, I can drop that export into the same tab every month, and that table will grow. So I don't have to re-highlight the new data. It'll automatically pick it up. And we're going to call it Pete's sample. And we'll hit next. It'll tell us what we're returning. We can actually go and check for errors in the data, right? It says there's no, let's see here, there's no errors. Why would I check for errors? Because sometimes we get a weird cell that's not returning correctly, and we need to go in and correct it before we load the data. So I now have all of that data inside of BizNet, and I can go look at it, right? So if I go back up to BizNet, and I look at all the different data connections we have, you can see I've got service connections, which was all our Stage 500 data we were looking at just a moment ago. And then I have Pete's sample data that I just connected to. So how many different data sources can I have? As many as you need, right? Whether they're direct connected data sources through a BizConnect or different tabs in the workbook that we're using for source data. So it's great. So now I've got all this wonderful data loaded in Excel. How do I build a report with it? I'll start like most of us do. We'll add a new worksheet. And there we go. So this is what we're going to start with. So I'm going to put a company in here just for as a reference point. So now we want to build it out. It's going to be our item, right? And we want the average gross margin. And so now I'm working directly with Excel data, but I'm going to use the BizInsight interface. And I do that going into our BizInsight product suite and using our query the data. And it's going to ask us, I'm going to start over because we just want to start with a fresh, there we go. It's going to ask us what we want to do. Do I want to create a function or a table? I'm going to start out by bringing a list of information in, which starts with a table with one column would be a list, right? Where does my data live? In this case, it could live lots of different places. Earlier, I demonstrated how to do it directly with Stage 500 Biz connectors. Here, we're going to use our Excel data this time. What item do I want to return? That's our source data. And which columns do we want to do? So there's all the columns that we brought in. I don't want to bring them all in and delete them and have to highlight them or do a reference or a lookup and all that kind of craziness. We can actually just tag which one we want. So in this case, I want the item description. There we go. And that's all I really want. Now we've got lots of transactions, so I don't want the same item over and over and over. I want to actually return it only once. We'll remove out the duplicates. So I'll say, okay, great, thank you. There's all of our items that we have, okay? And that's dynamic. So if it changes, we add new items to that report. When we bring in the data, it'll add that new item directly into our report, right? So now how do I get a gross margin? We'll do the same user interface, which is our BizInsight version 7. And we'll bring it in with our query tool. So now I've got a list of information, but I want to get the average margins. So I'm going to use a function to do that. We're still going to use the same source of data, but now I want the average. Great. And what are we going to average? We wanted to average the gross margin, right? And what do we want to average the gross margin for? An item description. So I'm going to take and add a filter for item description. And we'll point at it. I'm going to change that Excel anchoring so I can copy it down. And we'll click OK. And I don't need to filter to anything else at this time, but I could. As many different columns as you brought in, maybe you brought it in by a department, a cost center, whatever it happens to be, our salesperson even. I'm going to go OK. And we'll put that right there. And so that's our average margin on that item. I can format it and do all the fun stuff we do in Excel today. So this example, we've taken an Excel data set that you're exporting directly into Excel and given you a tool set to create reports with, right? I'll copy it down. And so now I can build reports with. And what's great is when I have questions of that, hey, that's great. Maybe I don't want, not only do I want to know what the average gross margin is, I want to know how many transactions we had involving that item, right? How many times are we selling that in this last year? So let's do the number of transactions. And so I'm going to go back in and I'm going to use that same formula we had just a moment ago. But instead of returning an average gross margin, go back into BizNet, use the query tool to say, hey, that's great, but instead of bringing back an average, I want to count. And we're going to do a distinct count. And we'll do it back based on the transaction number. And I'll click OK. And we'll drop it right in. And I didn't filter by the item, so I have to go back and do that. There we go. No, we did. I'm sorry. Let's double check it. Yep, there we go. So now I know how many times we sold that product. I know what the average margin on it was. And I did that from data we brought in. Several, I think it said 800 different rows of data in this particular case. We can go much larger than that, obviously. And then when I have questions, hey, that's great. I sold it 25 times. I want to drill down on that particular one. I could drill down and bring back the information. So there's the 25 transactions that we had that made them, that we sold for that part. So lots of different ways to work with data, whether we take and convert your existing report using one of the pre-built biz connectors that we have for more than 50 different products, or you use the BizInsight interface, version 7, to work with data that you're just bringing into Excel. Both of those items give you a great tool set to create those reports that you want to use across the organization. Of course, the last piece is once we've created all these wonderful reports, the best way to get the most value from those is to take and share that across the organization. And that's using the Biz Broadcast product that allows us to take any of the reports we created in this case, whether I was creating by division and wanted to share across the different divisions. Go to broadcast, and we create a broadcast tab in our workbook by creating a new distribution template. It allows us to organize and manage the report. So I've created an example where I'm going to send out a PDF. I'm going to send out a values only. So no longer am I going to do a paste values to share information. I can send it directly. In this case, we're going to take and generate two different reports, one that's going to bring back all the different reports, dashboards by division, etc., and one that's going to bring back a single report just for hardware. And I'm going to combine different years and different divisions in there as well. I've had a couple questions that you guys have popped in up to this point. We'll make sure that we have an opportunity to answer the rest of those questions as well. 3 takeaways we want you guys to have as you guys are typing your questions in. This is a great time to do that. I know we've got a lot of people on. If you got questions, it's a good time to share them. If you feel like emailing us back afterwards, we'll share contact information with that as well. The one thing we want everybody to remember, leaving today's webinar, we talked about those top 4 problems, connecting the data. Once I have the data, now what do I do with it? Of course, having to reproduce that each time. And then the last piece was, how do we share it, right? Everybody's got that problem. Everybody's working with data in Excel. We provide a quick and easy solution to that. So the first question I had was, do we have a connector to Intact? And we do. That's one of the 50 different the 50 different biz connections we have today, and it allows you to work directly with it. You can go out to BizNet software today, You can actually download a trial of several of those to try with. And they've got great getting started workbooks to help you get started, but there's certainly the ability to download that as well. The next question is, can BizInsights connect to Sage FAS? BizInsights can connect to most any data source that has ODBC connectivity. We don't have a BizConnect pre-built for it, but as I demonstrated, first and foremost, if you can get that data out of FAS, Sage FAS directly in, we can work with it. Of course, we could build a direct connection to it as well. A large Sage partner network to help support those needs if you guys want us to do that. The nice thing is today if you're using that particular product and you want to export it and work with the data, we've given you a solution as well. And then we can definitely take those and connect directly. Great question. All right, I had a question.
Hello, hello, Pete. At the very beginning, we had, yes, I just wanted to make sure that we got to this one because it's a great one. At the very beginning, we had a question about, what version of BizInsight is this, and when will it be available?
Great question. So this is our BizInsight version 7 product. Today, it's available on our website that you can download a trial of. The BizInsight solution is the ability to work with any data that is in Excel. So that's available today for download. We have several products that have Biz connections built for that version 7. Those include Intact, SAP B1, ZISPro, and several others I'm sure I've forgotten. And I apologize if I've forgotten those. But they're all out on BizNet software for you guys to use, learn. But these products that we're demonstrating today, they are all available for end users today to work with. So they're out there and available, and you can get at them directly inside of our BizNet software website. All right. And of course, some of the more commonly asked questions, and that's using existing spreadsheets. We demonstrate how to do that. It's not hard to use. It's very simple. Most people can take and use what we're using today. All right. Let's see. I've still got plenty of time for some additional questions, and let me try to step through these as fast as I can, and if I don't get to them all, I apologize. We'll get to you via email. So the next question, and I'll read it out for you guys, is my company utilizes multiple segments. What's the best way to use list multiple segments on a financial? Tired of using an if function. So today, if you guys remembered, I was using adding a parameter for customer. I can add a parameter for each one of those separate divisions. So I can literally create a report that filters by any segment that you've set up inside of your database. So that's one of the beauties of using BizNet is the ability to filter by segment. And then the demonstration on broadcast, we can also broadcast by individual segments as well. The next question was on versions of SysPro. The latest update, our version 7 product works with SysPro's version 7, the latest version of SysPro. We have a version 5 product which was available the last couple of years that's available for the earlier 6 version of SysPro. We're currently regression testing back to the earlier version, and I will make sure we take a note of that for the individual that asked it and follow up with you on it. But currently we know we work with the latest version of SysPro version 7 and the regression testing back on the previous versions. Next question was on Sage 100. Do we work with version 7? And we do. We work with the latest versions of Sage, and we have the Sage GL connection as well as our connectors that do all the other types of reporting for operational that we demonstrated today. Overview of pricing, user suite, connectors, etc. All of that pricing is available out on our website. The product with connectors starts as low as $65 per month is the way it's priced. Annually, that's that times 12, obviously, $780. The BizInsight suite itself is available on there. The pricing there as well. I don't I don't want to give you guys the wrong price, but it's definitely out on BizNetSoftware.com. And it's available both for a trial and a purchase if you guys want to do it directly through the e-commerce site. If you work with one of your partners, most of the partners we work with today in whatever channel, whether it's Sage, Cispro, etc., they have the ability to help you get training on that as well, and can certainly help. All right. Thank you for that. So pricing is online with a full connection. Real time starts as low as $65 per month for a user. My current company currently uses version 5. This is a great tool. So want to work on how we get better performance. So that's the nice thing is when we move, and thank you, Mary, for that question. I don't know which solution you're on, but we'll make sure we follow up. The latest update, which is our BizInsight 7, with the Biz Connectors, utilizes several performance enhancements that gets us a much quicker and easier to use product than what we've had in the past, and that's always our goal. We had a great product with our version 5 product that's been out for like the last 7 or 8 years. The latest updates, which include the new interface, also include several enhancements for performance as well. So Mary will make sure that we follow up with you on that specifically that's related to your ERP to help. So where do we download to download a version? And I'll make sure I pull it up right now just to share that along. If you haven't ever gone out to BizNetSoftware.com, that's our website. And we have the different products and the product overviews and how to buy or trial any of those products. So BizNetSoftware.com, great place to start. Everything's there, lots of videos to help step you through that. Please go out and try and use the product. That's the fastest way to get acquainted with it. I'm glad I could share that with you, though. All right. A little bit about BizNet, some of the larger clients and organizations we work with today. So some of the different partners we're working with today, lots of different ERP partners we work with directly. And of course, if you're not aware of the little company that could, we're out in Dallas, Texas. We work with more than 2,500 companies worldwide with our products, over 25,000 users in 50+ countries. So we actually have folks that are using our products in lots of different languages as well. So it's always fun and interesting. And I'm very lucky in that I get to travel to a lot of these places to work with clients. I want to thank everybody for attending today. As the follow-up, we answer the questions. There's our website again. If you didn't write it down when we spoke to it or talked to it and showed it, BizNetSoftware.com. You'll find our BizInsight product out there, as well as Biz Connectors and our Biz Broadcast, helping you to get those simple, easy connections to the data. So we connect you to your data, of course, once you get in there. A great, simple tool that anybody can use to work with and create reports, and of course, a nice, easy, simple way to share it. Again, thanks everyone for attending the BizNet Software webinars. We host at least 2 webinars per month. Sometimes they're as simple as providing additional Excel training or additional training on the different products that we have mentioned today, so you can continue to get additional information on those. We have a great BizNet YouTube channel for those of you guys that use the products currently and are always looking for a little additional help. Those are some great tools to use as well, and of course those that are considering BizNet software in our product suite for those using Excel. There's some great videos to show exactly how we do some of the different things we do. Very good. Well, thank you all for attending, and you guys have a great week.